portion of this video is sponsored by Surfshark. I've scored and ranked hundreds of earbuds, and today I'm going to use my own custom ranking to nail it down to 13 of the best. You can use this tool as well to create your own custom ranking, but I'll cover that later. So today I'll be covering a total of 10 categories, and the scoring is on a scale of 1 to 10. Now I have most of the big brand names. I haven't included any Jabra earbuds, as sadly they don't make earbuds anymore. But I've got some cheaper options from Nothing, Soundcore, and OnePlus, and those buds really hold their ground. Now think of this as an update to last year's top 10 video, but I've got a lot of new earbuds here. I'm constantly retesting earbuds. They're all updated to the latest firmware as well, so a lot of the scores have changed. But let's get into category number 1, comfort. Now here is all the scoring. Keep in mind, this is how the buds fit me. Fit is going to be different for everyone. So the Sony XM5 and Denon Pearl Pro are scored the lowest with a 7 out of 10. The XM5 are scored lower as the included ear tips are comprised of foam, which do give you amazing noise cancelling, but at least for me, it just feels like a lot in the ear canal compared to the higher scored buds. But I know of many people that can wear them all day, and the more I used the ear tips, they kind of softened a bit and became more comfortable. But the JBL Tour Pro 3 also include a pair of foam ear tips that are much more comfortable than the XM5. Now the Denon Pearl Pro is just a large bud with a pretty deep driver nozzle. I can wear them for a few hours before I get some discomfort, so they're not bad for me. Now all the buds with a score of 8 should be quite comfortable for most ears, even if you want to wear them all day. I've got the Nothing ear scored a 9 as they're one of the most compact earbuds. The OnePlus Buds Pro 3 have quite a shallow fit, so they just feel light in the ear canal. And the Pixel Buds Pro 2 are the tiniest earbud that I've ever tested, so if you have tiny ears, these should be the best option. Now category 2 is the security of the fit. Again, I have the XM5 scored the lowest, mainly because I lose the seal easily when exercising, especially when weight training. They're not going to fall out of my ears though. The buds scored with an 8 should work well for most types of movement or training. The buds with an 8.5 have a wingtip to provide a slightly more stable fit. The Denon Pearl Pro also have a wing, but due to their size, I found they still moved out of place slightly. Now when it comes to running, the only buds I wouldn't recommend are the Sennheiser Momentum 4 and Bowers & Wilkins PI8, as they have a little bit too much body-borne noise for my liking, so your own heavy breathing and impact you make on the ground reverberates through the ear tips a bit too much. Despite that though, the PI8 are one of my most used earbuds when weight training for their great sound quality. My second most used is the Bose QC Ultra for their strong noise cancelling. And of course, they just both stay in my ears very well. So I'm pretty picky when it comes to the security of fit for my earbuds, but I'm even pickier when it comes to my security online. And that's where today's sponsor, Surfshark, has your back. So Surfshark VPN basically safeguards your data and privacy online, allowing you to virtually travel the world, browse privately by encrypting your internet activity. It'll also block ads, malware, and much more. So all of your important information is encrypted, so your online activity is hidden from snoopers and trackers. So with this, you get some unique extras like being able to watch more shows on your streaming service. I just want to watch Breaking Bad for the 11th time, and it's not available on Netflix Australia. Chuck my VPN to America and I'm watching Breaking Bad. I'm having a good time. Thank you, Surfshark. Another issue that was brought to my attention when it comes to internet security is public Wi-Fi. Basically avoid it at all costs unless you have a VPN. So Surfshark is going to protect your data whilst you're on public Wi-Fi to avoid issues like identity theft or fraudulent purchases. And since I mainly use my phone when traveling, you can use Surfshark VPN across an unlimited number of devices. You also get more than just a VPN though. Surfshark includes an antivirus, you can get data breach alerts, and alternative ID is pretty awesome. It'll create for you a brand new online identity so you won't get bombarded by spam emails. There's also no risk in trying Surfshark as they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. So click the link down below or go to surfshark.com/pickieaudio or just use the code pickieaudio at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. All right, now if you're using your earbuds when exercising, dust and water resistance can be quite important. So here's all the ratings that you're getting. If a bud has 2 ratings, that second one will be for the case. So IPX4 is just your basic water resistant rating. If there's a number in place of that X, that means you get dust resistance as well. And the only bud that has a waterproof rating is the Galaxy Buds 3 Pro with an IP57 rating. So you could accidentally drop those buds in like a puddle or pool of water and they should survive. Still best to avoid that though. All right, now category 3 is case and battery life. So I'm just going to throw out all the scoring with the advertised battery you get with noise cancelling on and the fast charge. With the scoring, I also take into account a few extras such as how thick or thin the case is. I have a separate ranking for that. If you want to have a quick look, then pause here. So the AirPods Pro 2 is the thinnest and the Sennheiser Momentum 4 is the thickest. So you can really see that difference in size there. So it's really just the JBL Tour Pro 3, Denon Pearl Pro, and Momentum 4 that you'll notice a bit of chunk action in your pocket. Now back to the scoring, the only bud without wireless charging is the Bose QC Ultra. also take into account with the scoring if the case has an IP rating, which I mentioned just before. The Soundcore Liberty 4 Pro has a display on the case with some light customization options. The JBL Tour Pro 3 has a more decked out display. You can add up to like 14 pages of customization if you like, or just choose a few specific options. I found myself never using the screen on either of the cases, but it might be worth it for you. So scoring this is very tricky. Like, you might not care about having a thick case. The only thing you might care about is the earbud battery. So in that case, the Technics AZ100 are the best with 10 hours of battery with noise cancelling on. But the best total battery life goes to the JBL Tour Pro 3. But I have the Pixel Buds Pro 2 scored the highest, as I think they have the perfect balance of case size, earbud battery, total battery, water resistance, speakers in the case, Find My Case, they got everything. All right, now category 4 is controls. Now I'll quickly cover each bud here. So Bowers & Wilkins PI8 get a 7 out of 10. If you want to control volume, you need to sacrifice your noise cancelling and voice assistant control. Not ideal, and if you want to turn noise cancelling off, you need to do that in the app. The JBL Tour Pro 3 has the same issue, that's why they also get a 7 out of 10. Control customization is not great. The Denon Pearl Pro get a 7.5, as you get tons of customization, you can add whatever you like in there. You can even add spatial audio and sound quality customization to the control on your earbuds. The only issue is that you need to go into the app to turn noise cancelling off. Now the Sony XM5 get an 8. You don't get much customization, but you are able to control volume with a quad tap, and you can keep tapping to quickly adjust up and down. You also get speak to chat that will automatically turn on transparency when you start speaking to someone. You also get the always on Google Assistant on Android devices. So you can activate your voice assistant just by using your voice, even if your phone's not around. The Bose QC Ultra also get an 8 as they use swipe and touch controls. I love when my earbud has swipe controls, as you're able to play, pause, skip tracks, change noise cancelling controls, and adjust volume up and down, even when using one earbud at a time. You don't get much customization except for the long hold with ambient control, spatial audio, device switch, or a voice assistant option. The Sennheiser Momentum 4 get an 8 as well. You get regular touch controls with some decent customization in the app. The Technics AZ100 are very similar, touch controls with everything you need, but you also have the ability to power on or off the earbuds using the controls, which is pretty rare. The Nothing Ear also get an 8. They use squeeze controls that have great sensitivity. You get some decent customization in there. You can basically add everything you need. The Pixel Buds Pro 2 get an 8.5. They use touch and swipe controls. It is a small bud to swipe on, but I got used to it eventually. There's not much customization, but you also get the always on Google Assistant on Android, and Conversation Detect is like Sony's Speak to Chat. The wearing detection also uses skin detection, so you could put one bud in your pocket and your music won't resume, where with most of the buds on this ranking, your music would resume. So the AirPods Pro 2 also have skin detection, so they get an 8.5 as they use squeeze controls and swipe controls that work really well. You also get always on Siri, but only on iOS devices, and conversation awareness is similar to Google and Sony. Now the Galaxy Buds 3 Pro get a 9. You get an always on voice assistant on Samsung only, but they use voice commands which you can use across any device. As long as you set it up on an Android device, it'll work on an iPhone or whatever device, so it saves to the actual earbuds. With that, you can play, pause, skip tracks, adjust volume, and answer or reject calls. Now the Soundcore Liberty 4 Pro also get a 9. They use squeeze controls and swipe controls, but also have some very decent customization, and you also get speak to chat. The OnePlus Buds Pro 3 also get a 9 using squeeze and swipe controls, but they're the only bud that lets you change the swipe to track control. You don't get speak to chat, but you do get solid customization and skin detection with the wearing detection, which the Liberty 4 Pro doesn't have. All right, now category 5 is connectivity. Again, I'm just going to throw out all the specs and the scoring here. So from right to left, you got the Bluetooth version, the codecs, multi-point connection. Take stands for multi-point takeover. So if a bud has this, if you have more than one device connected, your audio will automatically switch over between devices when you press play on the other device. If an earbud doesn't use takeover, you just need to pause playback on one device before playing it on the other device. Now mono stands for mono mode. So when you're using one earbud with the other in the case, are you able to hear both the left and right audio channel out of that one bud? Surprisingly, a few buds don't have it, so be sure to check for that. And LL stands for low latency gaming mode. Most buds don't have it, but it doesn't matter too much. Now again, this is a very tough one to score. Like I've got the AirPods scored a bit lower because they work well on iOS devices. But if you're not using them on an iOS device, you don't get true multi-point connection. You miss out on a lot of features. Same with the Galaxy Buds 3 Pro. But if you are in those ecosystems, the scoring would basically be a 10 out of 10. Because I'm in the Apple ecosystem and AirPods just work great across all my devices. And I've noticed on the AirPods Pro 2 and Galaxy Buds 3 Pro, even though they don't have a low latency mode, they have some of the lowest latency I've ever measured, close to 150 milliseconds. But if you're on Android, you can use SBC, even aptX Adaptive has pretty low latency, and some buds that use LC3 or LE audio, as long as your device is compatible and it works well, you can get some very low latency as well. Now the three standout buds here are all scored with a 9. So the JBL Tour Pro 3 and Bowers & Wilkins PI8 both have case audio transmission. So you can plug your case in via USB-C or auxiliary to any device, and it works really well on both buds. The Technics AZ100 are also at the top, as they're the only bud with 3-way multi-point connection. It's not perfect, but you can have 3 devices connected at the same time, a very rare feature. Alright, now category 6 is call quality, and I run through 3 tests here: a quiet room, simulation crowd noise, and a simulation windy city with construction noise. That's a very tricky test. And since I've updated the firmware on many of the earbuds, I retested all 13. So here is all the scoring. I've also added in from left to right if you can mute the microphone using the controls on the earbud. I also added in if you can adjust volume on the earbuds whilst on a call. Next is ambient control, so can you switch between noise cancelling on, off, or transparency on a call. If there's an asterisk next to ambient control, this means you can change these settings in the app whilst on a call but not on the buds. And side tone is basically a mode that will automatically turn on when you answer a call, basically automatically turning on the transparency mode. But usually when a bud has side tone, it means you can't use noise cancelling when you're on a call. So I find it's just the best option is to be able to switch between noise cancelling on, noise cancelling off, or transparency. Now pretty much all the buds are fine in a quiet room, so I'll leave you with the samples for the crowd noise test as well as a windy city test, going from worst to best. Alright, now let's see how the microphones block out some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here's a Bose Quiet Comfort Ultra with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here's a Sennheiser Momentum 4 with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here is a Sony WF XM5 with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here's a Bowers & Wilkins PI8 with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here's a Pixelbuds Pro 2 with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here is a Denon Pearl Pro with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here's a OnePlus Buds Pro 3 with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here's a Galaxy Buds 3 Pro with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here is a JBL Tour Pro 3 with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here is a Nothing Ear with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here is the AirPods Pro 2 with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here is a call quality of the Soundcore Liberty 4 Pro with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, here is a call quality of the Technics AZ100 with some simulation crowd noise. Alright, now I have some city noise, some construction noise, and some simulation wind. Alright, here is the Bowers & Wilkins PI8 with some city noise, construction noise, and simulation wind. Alright, here's the Sennheiser Momentum 4 with some city noise, construction noise, and simulation wind. Alright, here's the Bose Quiet Comfort Ultra with some city noise, construction noise, and simulation wind. Alright, here's the Sony WF XM5 with some city noise, construction noise, and simulation wind. Alright, here is the JBL Tour Pro 3 with some city noise, construction noise, and simulation wind. Alright, here is the Pixelbuds Pro 2 with some city noise, construction noise, and simulation wind. Alright, here is the Denon Pearl Pro with some city noise, construction noise, and simulation wind. Alright, here's the AirPods Pro 2 with some city noise, some construction noise, and some simulation wind. Alright, here's the Galaxy Buds 3 Pro with some city noise, some construction noise, and some simulation wind. Alright, here's the OnePlus Buds Pro 3 with some city noise, construction noise, and simulation wind. Alright, here is a Nothing Ear with some city noise, some construction noise, and some simulation wind. Alright, here is the call quality of the Soundcore Liberty 4 Pro with some city noise, construction noise, and simulation wind. Alright, here is the call quality of the Technics AZ100 with some city noise, construction noise, and some simulation wind. Alright, now category 7 is app customization and extra features. Now I'll quickly cover each earbud here. I'm not going to go into detail because I'll be here all day. So the PI8 get a 5.5. You basically just get a 5-band EQ that does work well, some toggles, but the control customization and overall customization is quite lacking. Bose QC Ultra get a 6, also lacking control customization. You only get a 3-band EQ. Spatial audio with head tracking is sort of an extra. I'll cover all the spatial audio a bit later. The Denon Pearl Pro get a 7, great control customization, decent 5-band EQ. They use a hearing test to tailor the sound to your ears. You get spatial audio without head tracking. What's unique here is the volume limiter and gain mode. So that'll increase or decrease the total volume of the buds. Now the Momentum 4 get a 7.5. You get decent control customization, 5-band EQ, the hearing test will make an EQ for you, and sound zones will automatically change EQ and ambient settings with locations that you save. A unique one here is the battery protection mode that will prolong the life of your earbuds by only charging to 80%. I think it's a pretty good option to have. AirPods Pro 2 get a 7.5 as they're the only bud with no band EQ customization, but they make up for it with things like adaptive sound control, spatial audio, tons of hearing customization, and you can also use the buds as hearing aids. From what I've seen online, it seems pretty decent. The Sony XM5 get an 8, you get a solid 5-band EQ, a hearing test to create an EQ for you, speak to chat, adaptive sound, 360 audio, and some app integration in there. Nothing Ear gets an 8 as well. They have the most advanced EQ, you get Q factor and frequency adjustment, as well as a proper hearing test for tailored sound, and it's just a very smooth, well-built app. Definitely the best UI. You also get ChatGPT integration, but that's only on a Nothing device. The OnePlus Buds Pro 3 also get an 8. You get a decent 6-band EQ, a similar hearing test to Nothing, spatial audio with head tracking, and great control customization. The Pixel Buds Pro 2 get an 8 as well, decent 5-band EQ, you got always on Google Assistant, voice detect, left and right audio balance, and hearing wellness to make sure you're not listening too loud. Spatial audio is only available on Pixel devices though. Now the Galaxy Buds 3 Pro get an 8. The app is only available on Android, but you can save settings to the earbuds and then use them on any device. And you get a solid 9-band EQ, voice detect, siren detect with noise cancelling, 360 audio is Samsung only, but you can also have notifications read out, voice commands for controls, and adaptive sound control. The Technics AZ100 also get an 8. You get a solid 8-band EQ, spatial audio with head tracking, and tons of small customization options with controls and phone calls. The Soundcore Liberty 4 Pro get an 8.5. You get an 8-band EQ with a personalized hearing test, spatial audio with head tracking, voice detect, safe volume listening, and the screen on the case is a small extra, which gives you some quick access to what you would get in the app. I'm also giving the JBL Tour Pro 3 an 8.5 with the screen on the case as the extra feature as well, but you also get a great EQ. You can add as many bands in there as you can fit. You also get a hearing test that'll measure your left and right ear individually, spatial audio with head tracking, phone call customization, and speak to chat. Plenty of options in there. All right, now category 8 is noise cancelling, and how I test my noise cancelling. I chuck on my soundbar nice and loud and play simulation plane noise and crowd noise, as well as some music. So I'm getting low, middle, high, consistent, as well as inconsistent sounds. And here's all the scoring. It's so close between Bose and Sony. Over the years of owning both buds, I've retested them a ton on real flights and in real life, and it's just so close between the two. An advantage of the Bose Ultra is that they have a more comfortable fit. The XM5 really rely on the passive noise isolation of those foam ear tips. Without them, the noise cancelling is just okay. But like I said, the JBL Tour Pro 3 also include foam ear tips that really improve the noise cancelling strength, but they're incredibly comfortable unlike the XM5 ear tips. Now, comparing a bud like the XM5 to the lowest scored PI8, it's a pretty noticeable difference in noise cancelling, mainly with the mid-range and high frequency sounds. I'd say it's roughly a 20% difference between those two buds, so going off my scoring, I guess each half point is roughly a 5% difference. Now when it comes to EQ shift, so your sound quality changing between noise cancelling on, noise cancelling off and transparency, this will take ages to explain, so here's all that information there. Be sure to pause there if you want to have a longer look. Next is automatic wind reduction. So this is the earbud's ability to quickly turn your noise cancelling strength down if the microphones start to pick up wind. This can be quite annoying on a few earbuds, so here's all the information if you want to have a look. So if there is a yes there, that means the bud has automatic wind reduction. I've also added in how easily the microphones pick up wind. So a bud like the Momentum 4 picks up wind incredibly easily. There's no automatic wind reduction mode, but you can just turn on the wind reduction mode that will reduce the noise cancelling strength by about 50%, but then the mics don't pick up any wind. The Nothing Ear do have automatic wind reduction, but those mics pick up wind incredibly easily as well. So even the smallest gust of wind, that'll get picked up, and even with that wind reduction built into the earbuds, it's still quite noticeable. And finally, all the earbuds on this ranking allow you to use noise cancelling when using one earbud whilst you have the other in the case. The only bud that doesn't let you do this is a JBL Tour Pro 3. Just keep in mind, whatever earbud you're using, if there's no ambient control setting saved on that bud, you might need to go into the app to turn noise cancelling on. All right, now category 9 is the transparency mode. Now here is all the scoring. The main thing I look for with the transparency mode is how good the clarity is. Like, does it sound like what you normally hear? But I'm also looking for a minimal amount of white noise hiss and a minimal amount of occlusion, which is kind of that blocked ear effect and like your own voice sounding muffled when you speak. A lower score for white noise and occlusion means you get less of it, so that's better. So the Sony XM5 and Nothing Ear aren't too bad, but the occlusion is noticeable and the overall clarity is just a bit muffled. It's with buds that have a score of 9 or higher that I'm pretty comfortable to like maintain a conversation with someone, even if I'm in a pretty noisy environment. I personally just take my earbuds out when I need to speak to someone, but I know a lot of you need to leave them in. So the AirPods Pro 2 really separate themselves from all the earbuds on this ranking. Not only do they have the best clarity and just have the most natural transparency mode, they do so while having the least amount of white noise hiss as well. and I'm pretty sure it's improved over time from when they were first released, because I don't remember it being this good. Apple is always sneakily adding firmware updates to their earbuds. They also have the best adaptive transparency mode, which is basically a blend of noise cancelling and transparency. I love using the adaptive mode. Even when I'm around the house, like I can just turn a kettle on. Even if I turn a tap on, the noise cancelling will slowly start to turn on. So basically whatever I'm listening to is not gonna get drowned out by this noise. I don't even have to lift a finger to adjust my volume. The Galaxy Buds 3 Pro and Bose QC Ultra also use a similar adaptive mode. It's not as smooth as AirPods, but they both work very well. All right, now onto the final round, sound quality. And we'll start here with my max volume test if you just need to know what the loudest earbud is. Now keep in mind here, even the AZ100 with the lowest decibels still gives you plenty of volume to play with. You really don't want to be venturing anywhere past 100 decibels to make sure you don't lose your hearing. Stay picky with your hearing, people, trust me. Now let's quickly get spatial audio out of the way. Most of the buds do have it. So the Pixel Buds Pro 2, Galaxy Buds 3 Pro, and AirPods Pro 2's spatial audio can only be used in their ecosystems. With the Sony XM5, you can use 360 audio, but that's only going to be compatible with certain apps. Now I think spatial audio with music, if you have like the right Dolby audio track, can be quite interesting. I think the biggest benefit is going to be when watching movies, and I think the best implementation of this is AirPods Pro 2 with an Apple TV. So you can actually use spatial audio watching your TV rather than just being on your phone. Never really made sense to me. I actually don't own an Apple TV, but I've watched a ton of videos and it seems pretty decent. But when it comes to just listening to any song with spatial audio on, most of the buds aren't great. They had a lot of like reverb and strange effects. Kick drums sound very weird. I just don't really like it. But I think the Denon Pearl Pro had the best implementation of spatial audio for music. So it kind of brings the sound slightly in front of you, and it does so with the least amount of reverb and strange effects. I still prefer the sound with spatial audio off though. But now onto the actual sound quality itself, I need to start by saying how incredibly difficult it is to rank sound quality. Like, it's just my interpretation of the sound. I have my own preferences, and my preferences have changed over time. I used to be quite a bass head, where nowadays I'm like sort of a bass head, but I want a more balanced tuning. I really like some crisp treble. I want my upper mids to not be lacking, decent mids. I want everything to sound good, isn't that what everyone wants? Now, just being straight up, the main genres I listen to is metal, rock, symphonic metal, and like melodic techno. I still listen to all genres when testing my earbuds, but those are my go-tos. So aspects I really look for in the music that I'm listening to is like percussion. So being a drummer myself, I really love intricate hi-hat and ride work, acoustic guitars, distorted guitars, orchestration and symphonic metal. And all these details really do rely on a solid upper mid-range, treble and upper treble. But I still want my bass to kick in when needed. I like a tasteful amount of deep sub bass, but I don't want it getting too muddy or over the top. And also, to keep it fair here, I score all the earbuds with my favorite EQ customization, but I keep that EQ customization to the respected earbuds app. So let's get into it, starting with the Pixel Buds Pro 2. They're getting a 7.5 out of 10. My go-to EQ is a pretty decent bass and treble boost. The standout with these buds is a pretty open soundstage. Mids and upper mids are smooth, but nothing special. And the treble is just okay. I find it lacks a bit in overall detail, and the bass is balanced but lacks some punch. I do like that they have a low volume EQ option, which will boost bass and treble at lower volumes, since naturally we hear less, and that works quite well. Next is the Bose QC Ultra, also with a 7.5. My go-to EQ is just a slight treble boost. The standout with this tuning is a nice deep sub bass and forward mids. So vocals really cut through nicely, even with a lot going on in a song. At times, I think vocals can sound a bit forced and not that natural, but the upper mids are boosted nicely here, so instrumentation stands out well. The treble is smooth and detailed, so there's no sibilance, even with my slight boost. The drawbacks of this tuning is a bass lacking some punch. The soundstage is a bit closed in, and it's tricky to get the upper treble to a nice level for my preference. They also have a low volume EQ built into the earbuds, and it does boost bass at low volumes, maybe a little bit too much, but it's still nice to have it there. Next is the Soundcore Liberty 4 Pro, also with a 7.5. The stock tuning is quite muddy, so this is my go-to EQ, dialing down the bass and treble and boosting the mids. And with this, you're getting a powerful bass response with some nice deep sub bass rumble. It's still on the boomy side, but not overpowering. They do have Soundcore's best mid-range, so vocals stand out nicely. The treble is interesting though. The stock tuning gets sibilant more than I'd like, and dialing down to 12 kHz will reduce this, but then you start to lose that upper treble sparkle. If you use an external EQ, I think you can get these buds sounding a bit better. Next, we have the Nothing Ear with an 8 out of 10. The stock tuning is quite balanced. I use a personalized hearing test at 40%, and bass enhance on level 2, which makes them sound more lively. Now the mid-range here is definitely the standout. Vocals are rich and full, but also natural and not shouty. The upper mids are boosted nicely as well, and the treble has some nice detail, although the upper treble is a bit lacking. If you want to go really crazy with the sound, like I said, there's an advanced EQ with 10 bands in there, Q factor adjustment, definitely the most advanced EQ out of all the buds. And if you're a bass head, you can chuck that bass enhance slider up to 5, boost the buds like crazy, and you can push out some insane bass, the most bass on any of the earbuds on this ranking. Next is the OnePlus Buds Pro 3, also with an 8. I used a hearing test here combined with some light EQ adjustment, mainly boosting the mids. So what you're getting here is a really nice subtle V-shaped tuning. So the sub bass kicks in quite hard when needed. I'm a big fan of the bass here. The vocals are slightly recessed, but they're still boosted to a point where you're not going to miss out on anything. This is the same case with the upper mids. It's definitely not a standout, but there's just enough. It's a treble and upper treble though that stand out nicely. So details with instrument in those high frequencies sound great, and the soundstage is quite open. Just like the Nothing Ear, if you want to push out some insane bass, they have a similar bass wave slider. Those two buds are pretty neck and neck if you're a bass head. Next is a Galaxy Buds 3 Pro, also with an 8. The stock tuning is a bit on the bloated side, so this is my go-to EQ, slight bass reduction and treble increase. And with this customization, they sound very similar to the Nothing Ear. The mids aren't as forward, but it is incredibly close. I just prefer the Nothing Ear, and you do get that better customization, but it's close to the point where I had to keep the score the same. Next we have the AirPods Pro 2, also with an 8. I actually used to have these scored as a 7, but the more I've used the buds over the time, I don't know if it's because I got used to their kind of more balanced sound, but I know some firmware updates have been pushed out changing the tuning, so don't know what it is. Either way, I think they sound decent. They definitely have the most natural tuning out of all the buds. It's very well balanced. Mids are definitely the standout. Incredibly clear and well separated vocals. The upper mids are boosted nicely. The treble is definitely not a standout. It's quite smooth, but you still get some nice detail, no sibilance at all, and the soundstage is on the moderate side. I do like the bass response here. There's a bit of deep sub bass rumble, just enough mid bass, but it has nice punch to it, although if you're a bass head, you probably won't like them. But like Bose, the low volume EQ is built into the earbuds and it works very well. So at low volumes, you get some nice bass and treble, and it's not as over the top as Bose. Next is a Sony WF-XM5 with an 8.5 out of 10. My go-to EQ is a solid mid, upper mid, and treble boost. I wish there were some separate bands for sub bass and mid bass because my only complaint with the sound is that the sub bass is a bit lacking for my liking. And if you boost that clear bass slider, it boosts the sub bass and the mid bass, so it gets a bit bloated. Despite that, you're getting a rich, crisp, detailed sound. I love the mid-range here, so vocals are natural but stand out nicely. Upper mids don't fall back, and the treble is quite a standout, nice detail and sparkle that I really like. Soundstage is also quite open. So I'm going up this extra half point, not because it's a massive difference from the buds that I have scored as an 8, but I just find myself slightly more immersed in my music. Now the Sennheiser Momentum 4 also get an 8.5. My go-to EQ is a mid and upper mid boost. Now I used to have these buds scored a 9, but I have brought the score down because even with the mid boosting, vocals are definitely not the standout. Same with the upper mids, it's not bad, just not too forward, and you can only EQ the buds so much. I still think the overall tuning is great and it's quite unique. The bass kicks in hard when it comes to both sub bass and mid bass. At the same time, it still has nice punch. The standout though is the treble. The upper treble is boosted nicely, so you get some nice detail and sparkle, at the same time rarely getting too harsh. So bringing everything together, it's a very immersive tuning, at least for me. If you're a bit of a bass head as well and you want to retain some nice clarity, you'll love the Momentum 4. Next is the JBL Tour Pro 3 with a 9 out of 10. This is my go-to EQ when I use the foam ear tips. Keep in mind you can change the tuning to match the ear tips. Now I'm going up another half point here, as I find with the Pro 3, overall slightly more realism with instrumentation, and again I'm just more immersed in my music. This is a pretty balanced but rich tuning. The bass is super punchy, but the sub bass doesn't fall behind. Mids and upper mids are boosted nicely, the treble is super crisp and detailed, we're not getting too over the top or harsh, and the soundstage is quite open as well. They just sound great with any type of music I threw at them. And you get tons of customization, including a hearing test that measures each ear individually, and a low volume EQ option as well. But now we're going up to a 9.5 out of 10. We've got two buds here. The first one is a Technics AZ100. Now these buds need quite a bit of EQing as the stock tuning is a bit muddy and the upper mids are lacking. But after the EQ, you can kind of think of the sound similar to the JBL Tour Pro 3, but with a slightly more open soundstage. And the treble is not as direct, but at the same time, it just has great detail. The upper treble really stands out. Vocals come across rich and natural, and I'm just noticing slightly better instrument separation compared to the Pro 3. Not a huge difference, but I think worthy of that extra half point. So the second bud with the 9.5 is the Denon Pearl Pro. So they use a hearing test, which I recommend doing a few times. And this is my go-to EQ, mainly boosting the mids and treble. Even with the strong boosting here, I'd say the sound here is slightly more laid back compared to the AZ100 when it comes to treble. The bass is balanced, but definitely not lacking in the sub or mid bass department. The soundstage is not as open as the AZ100, but it does get pretty close. But again, it's the overall immersion and realism I got on the Pearl Pro that I just love. Vocals and instrumentation just have this unique sense of realism. The pluck of a guitar, percussion, piano, everything's just clear and sounds very realistic. It's a hard one to explain. Maybe it's like the hearing test measuring my ear, doing some sneaky stuff behind the scenes. Either way, it sounds great. Now the final bud here is a Bowers & Wilkins PI8 with a 10 out of 10. So this is my go-to EQ, mainly boosting the mids and upper mids, and I dial down the treble slightly. Now the PI8 tuning is definitely the most unique out of all the buds. The treble is a huge standout. It's bright, detailed, and the upper treble doesn't hold back. It took me some time to get used to this type of tuning, but once my ears adapted, they just sound great. Some words I noted down to kind of explain the tuning is angelic, airy treble, open soundstage, and I also added in majestic in there. So it's an interesting tuning. The bass is very punchy, has a bit of deep sub bass rumble. The mid bass is very full, but it's pushed to the point of like just before it gets too bloated or over the top. But it's just a very musical bass response. So the low end for more instrumentation, vocals, percussion, just has this unique sense of realism. It's just very rich. The vocals are still slightly recessed, but they don't fall behind. It's just not a very forward vocal experience. But combined with the treble, I noticed female vocals just sound amazing, or even like male vocals in those higher ranges. A perfect example of this is a song called You by RyX, and the PI8 just nail it with this song. It's like quite a bright song, so the vocals are majestic. You really hear the detail on the acoustic guitar, and you really notice that open soundstage. Now the upper mids are also very decent here with my slight boost in the EQ. So if you're a bit of a metalhead like me, you won't be disappointed. These are my go-to earbud when listening to metal, especially symphonic metal, and all music basically. Now the bass is quite natural as I mentioned, but it's a mid bass that really gives distorted guitars that heavy live sound, and double kicks are still punchy and full and well separated. And if you're into symphonies or just classical or anything with orchestration, the PI8 are by far the best earbud for that. The only real downside with the tuning is that, like I said, the treble can be a bit much. I do bring that upper treble down slightly in the EQ to balance this out. So this kind of comes down to personal preference. Some people like a more laid back treble response. I like it when it gets kind of pushed to its limits so you can really get that detail and instrumentation. But that really goes for any type of tuning. We'll all have our own preferences and we all kind of adapt to a certain sound. So if you listen to like one earbud for 1 week straight and you try another earbud that might be a bit brighter, it's probably going to sound a bit weird to you. So if you try a new type of tuning or new EQ, give it some time for your brain to kind of settle into it. But that wraps up all 10 categories. And before we go into the final score, here's how you can customize the scoring with my free spreadsheet linked below. So on there, you can compare all the buds easily. I've got notes for each score. You can compare all the specs. There's also a core quality tab with all my tests. And to personalize the scoring, it's really easy. Just fill out a number in the importance column that'll multiply the entire category, giving you a new total score for all the earbuds and a new custom ranking. But here are all the total scores without any customization. And I'll quickly cover each bud because they all have their own unique pros and cons that might matter to you. So the Technics AZ100 do take the win with 86.5 out of 100. And fair enough, they're a pretty flawless earbud with some of the best sound. They don't really have any major flaws. If you don't mind spending a bit, you won't be disappointed. But the OnePlus Buds Pro 3 are just in second place, and they're also a pretty flawless bud at half the price of the AZ100. Sound quality is definitely better on the AZ100, but the Pro 3 still sound great. In third place is the Pixel Buds Pro 2, also a solid all-rounder, amazing comfort, and great especially if you're in the Android or Google ecosystem. The only real minor issue is the sound, it's just okay. Now in fourth place is the JBL Tour Pro 3. Standouts is the comfort, strong noise cancelling, great sound, and case transmission. So if comfort, noise cancelling, and sound are your priorities, these are the best bud to get. Now in fifth place is the AirPods Pro 2. If you're in the Apple ecosystem, it's a no-brainer. It's just so convenient, and the noise cancelling is great. They have the best transparency mode and a solid balance tuning. Now in sixth place is the Soundcore Liberty 4 Pro. They're scored very well considering they're the cheapest bud in this ranking. It's only the sound that's slightly behind the OnePlus Buds Pro 3. Now in tied seventh place is the Nothing Ear and Galaxy Buds 3 Pro. The top 7 are all incredibly close, but the Nothing Ear is priced pretty close to the OnePlus Buds Pro 3. Comparing those two, the Pro 3 has a noticeably better transparency mode, but the Ear has a more balanced mid-focus tuning you might prefer. Now the Galaxy Buds 3 Pro are a no-brainer if you're in the Samsung ecosystem, and they're just solid overall. Now in tied 8th is the Sennheiser Momentum 4 and Sony XM5. Now the Momentum 4 is really the only bud I wouldn't recommend. There's just no standout reason to buy them today. The XM5 do give you the strongest noise cancelling and they still sound great. It's just the comfort might be an issue. If you don't mind slightly weaker noise cancelling but want great comfort and some of the best sound, that's where I would recommend the JBL Tour Pro 3 over the XM5. Now in 9th place is a Denon Pearl Pro. Their standout is the amazing sound and they're pretty decent overall, but with the chunky design, comfort can be hit or miss. But I've seen these buds for 50% off, so when they're at that price, that's the best sound quality you can get relative to the price. Now in 10th place is a Bose QC Ultra, also ranked highest for noise cancelling, but they're more comfortable than the XM5 and still sound pretty decent. They might be worth it, just keep in mind the core quality is pretty bad. And in last place is a Bowers & Wilkins PI8, which is actually the bud I've personally been using the most. I just love the sound. They're super comfortable, noise cancelling and transparency is good enough. They're just very expensive though, so it's not a common recommendation from me. If you want to fork at that extra money, then you can get that pretty standout sound. But that wraps it up. For more of these in-depth comparisons, check out my playlist right here. I do this for multiple categories, so check it out. Thanks for tuning in, stay picky, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.